One, let me know how my audio is so that we could get started. We're going to be doing a Q&A today. We already have a whole bunch of questions. Mostly, I don't know why you're posting your question here. I already have your question on Patreon, so I'll address it there. So, guys, first we're going to go. Anybody want to confirm that my audio is good? So, for people who don't know, I usually post this on Patreon, and this make it only accessible to patrons. And then under the post, under the Q&A post, all our patrons could post their questions. So wow, like Mosi, like you can see Mosi here is in the live chat as well. He posted a whole bunch of criticisms of me, which I'm going to go over. D asked a question, Claudia asked a question, Rob asked a question, Secular Sakai asked two questions, Rob asked another question here. So we're going to go through all the patron questions first, and then we're going to look in the live chat and answer maybe some super chats and some member questions as well. And then if there's any time at the end, we'll see we could answer other questions as well. Okay. So Mosi is saying, okay, Mosi is saying, okay, cool. All right. So let's go through the patron questions. The first patron question, maybe I could zoom in. Do you guys prefer if I zoom in here on Patreon or if I like highlight it like this, the patron questions at the bottom? Let's just today we'll just share the screen on Patreon. Right. So again, for people who are not familiar with how this works, is that we make the post to the stream a day, usually a day ahead of time or 2 days ahead of time, and it's only accessible to patrons so that patrons can post their question. And if you want to become a patron, link is in the description. This way you could ask your questions before we go live, and then after that we'll go through the live chat questions. Okay. Seeing Music Guy is here, Secular Rarity is here, D is here, Suzanne is here, Hamad is here. Hamad is a pro-Islamic Republic person. Hamad is here. Sterling is here. Cool. Let's get started. Okay, so here's the first question. Yeah. Oh, Nagar is here. Hi, Nagar. All right. So Secular Sakai saying, Armin, back when you were a Muslim, did you identify as Ismaili, Imamiyya, Twelver, or another Shia domination, or were you a non-denominational? Okay, so this Imamiyya, Twelver is just the main Shia default religion, I guess, in Iran. So I mean, I never identified as Ismaili. Like, it would be very bizarre for me to identify as Ismaili because you would have to. I think people who are identify as Ismaili are born into it. I haven't ever met a single person. I'm sure they exist, but I haven't ever met a single person who was convinced into being an Ismaili, because none of these make any sense, right? Like you have to be born into it. Like, not have to, but most likely are born into it. So no, I mean, I obviously, when I was a Muslim, you become a Muslim that is just accepts the de facto religion, which is like the you know 12er Shia Islam, all the way to Imam Zaman, which is the Mahdi version, the Shia version of the Mahdi, right? So from Imam Ali to Imam Mahdi, that was what we assumed to be the correct version of everything, of religion, of Islam. So, but however, that's when I didn't take religion seriously. So that's what I was. But eventually, when I took it a little bit more seriously and I looked into it more, I became not even very interested. Like, when I became very religious, my main concern was my relationship to God. My concern was not relationship to the imams, or you know, it was it was just God. It was like I was obsessed with being close to God. I guess if I kept on being religious, I might have like become more like a Sufi or something if I kept on being religious. But then the more I took it seriously, the more I looked into it, the more ridiculous the whole thing ended up seeming. Yeah, but I think maybe if I've continued being religious, I would have been a Sufi, because my relationship to God was the most important thing to me. All these other discussions about different sects seemed you know insignificant compared to what the priority should have been God. That's what I thought, right? um all right, I'm gonna star some of the comments here which are not Patreon questions, so I could get to these questions at the end. All right, so Rob has a follow-up question on Secular Sakai's question. Rob is saying, follow-up question for Armin: how are Shia minorities such as Ismailis treated in Iran? Are they treated better than the Sunnis? No, I think they're treated. Okay, I'm not very sure about this, but I think they're treated worse than the Sunnis because they're a bigger threat to Shia Islam, and there's a whole bunch of conspiracies around them. Shia minorities are considered to be like agents of Zionism or Great Britain or something that is come to like tear out Shiism from within. And also there's less of them, right? There's more okay, I don't know about this, but I'm assuming there's a whole bunch of more Sunnis. I shouldn't talk about Sunnis like that. There's a lot more Sunnis in Iran than there are Ismailis. So Sunnis, if you are mean to Sunnis, they are too much. I mean, they are discriminatory against Sunnis, but Sunnis have a higher capacity, especially because Sunnis live at the borders, right? So they're either eastern borders or western borders of Iran. So if you treat them too harshly, their separatist movements will become a lot stronger. So I mean, you want to like the Islamic Republic would be discriminatory against Sunnis, but not to the extent where the separatist movement will like, okay, that's it. We're gonna we're gonna and a lot of the Sunnis in Iran are armed, right? So that's why there's a limit to the discrimination that the Islamic Republic can do against the Sunnis. But the Shia minorities, I mean, they're not armed and they're less and they have no support. And there's a whole bunch of conspiracies about what they represent, including being agents of Zionism, like the fifth column or Illuminati, all that stuff. These are all these conspiracies. Like we had it in school. We learned about this the Ismailis in school, that they are like a conspiracy by the Great Britain and stuff like that. So all these things, so I think like Shia minorities have it worse in Iran than Sunnis, but that's my impression. So it could be completely wrong. This is just my guess based on personal experiences and based on personal stories I've heard. And you all know how unreliable personal experiences and personal stories are. So just take this like this is not based on any data. So I could be completely wrong about this, right? Secular Sekai is here as well. Does anybody disagree with me on this in the live chat? This is my impression. Okay. Somebody in live chat is asking what happens when you die. Okay, I started a comment. I guess I'll get back to it when I finish with the Patreon questions. All right, so again, this was the first Patreon question. That's the second Patreon question. Let's see, so we have about, I think, 9 Patreon questions. I'll get through the Patreon questions and then I'll go to the live chat. Again, guys, if you want me to spend more time on your questions and your questions get priority, link to our Patreon is in the description. Once you become a Patreon, every time I post a link to our Q&A, you could post your questions as a comment, and all your questions will get a priority that way. Negar, who is a fellow Iranian, she's agreeing with me. She's saying yes. Me, Armin. Wait, Negar, what do you mean, me, Armin? Like, wait, are you ex-Ismaili? I don't know what that means. If you are ex-Ismaili, because I know Nagar is an atheist, so she's not Ismaili right now. But if you are, then that would be very. Oh, you agree? Oh, so Armin, me, like she agrees. Okay, I agree. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna start this question as well. Okay, it's hard to do this without Susanna because I need to pay attention to the live chat as well and make sure I start your questions as they come in, so I could get back to them later. Right? If I miss any of them, sorry. I'll try to pay attention. Okay. All right. So here's the next Patreon question by Secular Sakai. Secular Sakai saying, back in 1990, the Caribbean nation of Trinidad and Tobago had a failed Islamist coup where parliament was taken hostage If the separatists had succeeded, what do you think the geopolitical consequences would have been of the first Islamic government in history forcing a foothold in the Western Hemisphere or the Americas? Yeah, so my understanding is that there is no Islamic countries in the entirety of the Americas, which is pretty amazing if you think about it, right? You have like an entire continent of with no Islamic countries. That is very significant. So apparently, this, you know, Trinidad and Tobago almost became an Islamic countries in the 1990s. I don't know if that's fair to say, because it seemed like with how minority of a Muslim population, I don't think it was realistic for them to be able to hold it as an Islamic country. Like I think this is a coup that was doomed to fail. So it's like just this is a very hypothetical that is very unlikely, right? Like even if the coup was successful, it would have been successful for like, I don't know, half a day. Like I don't know if an Islamic country could like hold, Trinidad and Tobago. Am I pronouncing it right? Yeah. But like, let's just for the sake of, um, just for the sake of, you know, like playing with this hypothetical, assume that they would be able to hold an Islamic government. And again, this is guesswork. I don't know if any of this would be accurate. Nobody can tell, right? But I'm assuming that if you had such an Islamic country in, I don't know, South America, for example, or in the Caribbeans, to be more precise, um, I'm assuming that there would be a whole bunch of Islamic countries that would be trying to use it as a proxy, right? As a way to smuggle in. I mean, this is, I think, a very fair guess. We already see Venezuela, who is more buddy buddies with like the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran is already using this Venezuela as a base of operations in the Americas, like, and a few other South American countries or Latino. I don't know if that's the PC way to say it. I don't know. I haven't been up to date with the most PC things, but um, yeah, we can see Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, is already using some of these countries as a base of operations in the entire Americas. So I'm assuming that if we had a Sunni government, especially in the 1990s, where the Saudi Arabia was, dabbling in radical activities around the world way more than it is today. I'm assuming like Saudi might have used Sunni Islamic government as a way to, you know, um, exercise their influence in the region. So that's what I think would have happened, right? You know, especially given that we see that right now, even with non-Islamic countries like Venezuela, Islamic Republic of Iran is using it. I mean, they were trying to, like, for example, when the Islamic Republic of Iran recently tried to kidnap Masih Ali-Najad from the United States, right? To bring them back to Iran. And for example, they were using Venezuela as a base of their operation to bring it to Venezuela, and then from Venezuela to go back to Iran, right? So Venezuela is like a non-Islamic country. Like imagine if you had an Islamic country. Oh God, my power went out. Hold on, let me turn off this. I have to go through the stream today very fast. All right. Okay. Let's continue this without power. How's my audio? Is my audio still okay? All right. Let me see. Let me see what you guys are saying in the live chat. Are you vegetarian? I'm going to start this. Yes, D is saying the U.S. would have had a fit. Yeah, exactly. This would be. I think that. Oh yeah, you're right. Actually, D is pretty. That's pretty true. The CIA would have had a whole bunch of operations probably in this country if it was being used. No name saying it's really interesting that there's no Islamic countries over here. I heard there's a huge Lebanese population in South America. Yes, but they're all still minorities. They were going to kidnap Masih Ali-Najad. Yeah, exactly. Susanna was pointing out what I was pointing out before I said it. Susanna saying they were going to kidnap Masih Ali-Najad to Venezuela, then move her to Iran. Exactly. Secular Sakai is saying, I wonder if they would have gotten foreign funding from the Middle East and North Africa region like Chechnya did. Yep, that was my guess. So that's good. All right, audio is on. Yes, audio is fine. Okay, good. So we're good with audio. So let's continue. See, I have power backup for my internet in case the power goes out. So that's good. All right. So next patron question is by Hilde, I think. Okay, so Hilde is asking, how is suicide viewed in Islam? Well, suicide is a major, 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 major sin in Islam, one that would almost guarantee you to go to hell for what we were told ever, because technically you just committed murder against your soul. Um, the understanding is that you are not allowed to kill anybody because that's God's choice. Uh, God, only God gets to decide. Well, I mean, unless you're killing. Well, I can't say that. I have to choose my words carefully so that YouTube doesn't think I'm saying something that I'm not, right? So even if you are doing jihad, right, and like taking lives, technically you're doing the will of God, like you're being the hand of God. So you're not doing, so you're fighting on behalf of Allah. So, but other than that, you can't, and also if you are carrying out executions, you're carrying out the law of Allah, right? But at the end of the day, it's God's choice. It's God, a life is God's choice to take and give, right? So you can't just take one's life, including your own, and that would be a major sin in Islam. One that we were told. I know different people might have different interpretations, but we were told in school that would get you to hell and forever, right? Because technically you just committed murder, right? So how does I guess the reason why people ask this is because of like suicide bombings and stuff like that, right? Um, and that's why a lot of Islamic scholars are saying, like, how could you say that these radical Muslims that commit suicide bombings, how could you say they're Islamic, given that suicide is a sin in Islam and none of this is allowed, right? But so it really depends on how you look at it. This is why religion is very dangerous, because basically your hand is, when you have magic on your side, your hand is open to make excuses for everything. The earliest form of suicide attacks were done, if people, I don't know if this is sensationalized or if it's accurate, but the Ismaili assassins, right, during the Fatimiyun, dynasty back in Egypt, when they were assassinating the both, you know mostly Muslims. Okay, so the way this gets portrayed in the media is that they mostly assassinated, what is it called, the Templars, like the knights. What is it called? Um, the what are those? Yeah, Templars, right? Is that what they're called? Yeah, the Knight Templars. I don't know if that's what they call. Yeah, the Knights Templars, right? So because the media likes to portray this as like a Muslim versus Christian fight that it used to be, like you had like Islamic assassins going out and taking Christian knights and stuff like that, right? So that's pretty exciting for especially Hollywood and movies and stuff. But that a lot of that did take place, but most of their targets of those Ismaili assassins, most of them were other Muslims, especially because you had multiple caliphs at the time. You had, at some point, you had three caliphs competing with each other in Islamic history, but two of them was like the Fatimiyun, and the major one, the Abbasid dynasty. So there was a major competition between these two, and the Ismaili assassins would take out like key figures in the other Islamic dynasty. So most of their targets were actually other Muslims, not Christians, even though they did attack Christians as well, right? So the understanding is, and I don't know how accurate this is, but this is what I read a long time ago, is that when they sent these assassins to take out their target, they would be trained on how to get to their target, but they wouldn't necessarily need to train on how to get out. Like, it was a suicide mission, right? Because they didn't care that much if they died once they took out their target, right? Um, and they were so much more effective because usually if you had to plan an assassination, if you were limited based on if your plan had to um, come up with ways to assassinate your target but also get out alive, the options that you had to take out the target would be a lot more limited, right? However, if you didn't have to worry about coming out alive, then your hands were a lot more free to do a lot more stuff, right? And these assassins were so committed to their faith and to their leaders that they didn't have to plan for coming out alive, right? So they would go in, they would take out their target, and they would get captured and get killed, right? Or tortured and then killed, right? Or killed on the mission. So they many years ago they set a precedent for this. But however, that is technically not them committing suicide, even though it's a suicide mission, because they didn't die with their own hands, right? In a similar way, by the way, it's interesting because the earliest form of suicide attacks in Islam was done by Shias, because Ismailis were Shias. And even in the modern era, the earliest form of celebrated suicide attack was not done by Sunnis, was done, in modern radical Islam. Also, the earliest form of a suicide attack was done by Hossein Fahmideh, which was apparently, I don't know how accurate the story is, but this is what we grew up with as a hero of ours, which was a 12-year-old kid who ran under an Iraqi tank and blew it up. And that story is kind of sus because we were told he like put grenade on himself and then went and lied down under a tank and the tank blew up. And this 12-year-old kid, oh yeah, and MEK, Susanna saying, and MEK as well. These are all Shia. Oh, let me turn this up. Oh my god, we have to deal with this noise. I can't believe would have to deal with this noise. How annoying is this noise in the background? Let me know. Hold on. If I turn this off, we're gonna lose my internet. Tell me how annoying that noise is. I hope the power comes back soon. Yeah, this was in the late 80s. It's noticeable. Okay, it's noticeable, but how? And from a scale of 1 to 10, how annoying is that? Why can't I turn it off? I usually am able to turn it off. Okay, I might have to do the rest of the patron questions at another time because of this noise. A solid 5. Okay. All right, guys. I might have to. So let me just tell you. So okay. So the answer to this question is that um, the a lot of scholars say, like, if you make an attack and you happen to die in an attack, then it would be then that's not a suicide, right? But if you actually press a button that makes you die, you're knowing that this will kill you, that would be suicide, and that's a sin in Islam. Okay, so that's my understanding is. But if you go to a mission trying to take out the enemy and the enemy takes you out, and you knew that the enemy will take you out and you will die, that is not suicide because you technically didn't kill yourself. Okay, so that's the answer. So Mo is thinking that I'm like running away because he has some serious criticism of me. He's saying in Persian that you are afraid and you are running away. But Mo, I will answer your question. I'm actually very excited about answering your questions. Okay, I can't just do it with this noise. Once the power come back on, I will reschedule the stream. All right, guys, I'm going to end the stream here. Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry. So the internet just went out, so I'm going to end the stream. I will reschedule it. I'll make sure I'll go through the rest of the Patreon questions as soon as I can. Okay, I apologize about that. So mostly saying I love you. No, thank you. Welcome back. Yeah, okay. So my internet went out. I have a whole bunch of other Patreon questions. I mean, I could respond to the. I could go through it like this. How about that? What should I go through the Patreon questions like this? I have it all here. I don't know. What do you guys think? Susanna's saying, "Oh no." Let me see what it's saying. Yeah, because. Oh no. Yeah, Susanna's saying this was really good so far. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yes, do it. Okay, so the only problem is that I have access to some of the questions because if I, for example, if I highlight most question, yeah, half of it gets cut off because his questions was very long. So I could answer the shorter versions. Let me see what you guys are saying. Secular saying keep going. Okay, okay. Yes, do it. Okay, sure. I can come. I promise them good questions and answers. Okay, so mostly you might have to post your questions again because your questions were so long and they were so good, and I really wanted to go through them. But if I highlight them, it's just like the entire thing is not here. So you might have to go on Patreon and bring them back and put them in multiple parts. Okay. All right. So let me unstar this comment. Unstar this comment. Okay. Unstar this comment. Wow, this is the first time. All right. Oh my God, this is such a good question, but I don't have the full thing. Can somebody give me like Susanna? If you have access to Patreon, can you give me the full version of this question so I could see it in multiple parts? So Rob is saying, hold on, look at the thing that we have to deal with. On the okay, on the question of defeat versus reform, I personally am I'm much more on the side of defeat. However, I can see both possibility happening in the future. Congruently. If people in the Muslim world start leaving Islam in very large numbers, I can see a possible situation. Oh, my power came back, so I could just turn on back my computer. Okay, I'm gonna join the computer on the computer very soon. Okay, so given that my power came back, let me get a shorter question, and then I'll go to the one that is longer, so I could show the entire question live on my computer. Okay, so Chloe is saying I'm always a little bit behind in listening, so forgive me if you have addressed it. But what is the impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on Iran? Is Iran allied with Russia? Will Iran help Russia? Will Iran be affected by reduced availability of wheat imports or the collapse of the ruble? Okay, Claudia, you have no idea what a great question you just asked, okay? So I'm going to try to answer it while I also log into my computer. So the main connection that this whole Russia situation has with Iran is through, guess it with me, Israel, okay? Israel. Let me log in. God, I'm so glad the power came back. Restore all my tabs. Oh, the internet needs to come. Okay, so think about it this way. The only reason Israel is allowed to hit Iranian targets in Syria is because Russia allows it. Iran is smuggling a lot of advanced weapons that I don't know how to explain because it's beyond my understanding of how any of this works, right? But the weapons that Iran is smuggling into Syria, right close to Israel's borders, are extremely advanced and very, very dangerous for Israel, right? And Russia understands that. Russia's involvement in Syria has been devastating for Israel because it was through Russia's saving of Assad that made it possible for Iran to be able to for Iran to stretch its military all the way to Israel's borders. However, Russia also understands that it cannot just not allow Israel to defend itself against Iran, even though Russia and Iran are on the same side when it comes to defending Assad. Russia would not go as far as stopping Israel from attacking Iran's forces in Syria, knowing how big of a threat this is to Israel, right? However, so Israel has to maintain a good relationship with Russia so that Russia continues to give Israel the green light for it to take out Iranian assets in Syria. But at the same time, Israel is part of, it's allied with United States and Western European countries and stuff, and they are expected to take a strong position. Right now, everybody is, even China is bending the knee. Even China is bending the knee and accepting to take somewhat of a position against Russia's aggression, right? So you can see Israel is now stuck between a rock and a hard place because they don't want to make Russia angry, because if they make Russia too angry, then Russia could easily, not remove the green light from Israel to be able to have, to just be able to operate like this in Syria. And that would be devastating for Israel. So that's one effect that this whole thing is happening. Like the world is expecting Israel to take a stronger position against Russia, but at the same time, Israel is like wondering what this is going to do with their operations in Syria. So that's one effect. That's a major effect this is having. Another major effect that this is having, the whole Ukraine situation is having on Iran, is with the Vienna talks. Well, when Russia was attempting to use Iran, as a, okay, my internet is back here. Let me see. Okay. There we go. Hey, I'm back. You guys have my audio? There we go. All good? Let me know. Yeah, so I don't know if a lot of you know, but Iran has Khamenei, the idiot who is Khamenei, has decided that for these talks, for the nuclear talks, they're going to punish the United States by, instead of punishing United States, punishing Iran instead, right? The way they did it is like Khamenei said that given that Trump pulled out of the JCPOA deal, nuclear talks, the United States cannot be trusted. Therefore, what we are going to do is that we're not going to talk to the enemy anymore. We are not going to take in the new rounds of negotiations. We'll talk to every country except the United States, right? So this basically made it possible for Russia to come and speak on behalf of Iran when it comes to talking to United States, because Khamenei, in his infinite wisdom, decided that we're just going to be like, we're not going to talk to you because you were pulled out of the deal. Well, now their hands are tied because they are not Iran, because of Khamenei's demand that that Iran doesn't talk to United States. It has made things very difficult for the negotiating team on the Iranian side to basically have direct talks with the United States about the demands that they have. So instead of Iranians talking to Americans, we have Russians representing Iranians talking to Americans, and Russians being interested in their own geopolitics, obviously are taking advantage of the situation, not to ask for the things that is necessarily in Iran's best interest, but a lot of times asking for things that are in Russia's best interest, right? So this is how Khamenei, really screwed Iranians over when it comes to these new rounds of deals. And obviously, a lot of this was happening. And when the Ukraine stuff happened, Russia was using this position that they have to also try to circumvent the sanctions that the United States was putting on Russia, using the talks in Vienna, right? This is like, Russia is not a very good advocate that Iran has used in these Vienna talks, right? So that's another major impact that this was all happening. Was when I was using my phone, was everything that I was saying clear, or do I need to go back to all of that? We're good, right? I think we're okay. Let me share back my screen. There we go. I don't have to highlight this anymore. Oh, Vikram is here. Hi, Vikram. Yeah, Mo C was saying best to say Putin dictatorship, not Russia, or Khomeini, not Iran. Yeah, I am more. I agree with you. I am more careful with Iran. I try to not to say Russia. I try to say Putin. I try not to say Iran. I try to say the Islamic Republic of Iran or the Islamic Republic. But I'm more careful because I know you guys get upset when I say Iran. So I'm more careful with Iran. I have to be more careful with other countries as well. Like I don't say, I shouldn't say Saudi Arabia. I should say like the House of Saud or something like that. Yeah, because I don't want to hold entire countries responsible for the actions of their dictators. But that's a very good point. I am always trying to be more mindful of that. Yeah, Vikram, I'm going to start your question, but first I'm going to go through the Patreon question, but I started your question so I could get back to that. Did I miss any questions in the live chat that I need to? Okay, Bulbul asked a question, so I'm going to start Bulbul's question as well. All right, let's finish the Patreon questions, right? Okay, so this is a question that I didn't go through yet because it was too long to highlight. So, but now that we have the screen share back on again, I could go through this Patreon question. Rob is saying, on the question of defeat versus reform. So for people who don't understand what this means, defeat versus reform, what is being referred to is that two camps, two different views with regards to Islam. The people like me who think that Islam shouldn't be reformed, Islam should be defeated, eliminated. We should be moving past Islam, just like we have to be moving past all religions. And the people who say, like, you know what, that would be good, maybe, but it would be better in the meantime to reform Islam rather than, because it's, I already have many videos on this to completely demolish, destroy, and humiliate people who support reform. So, and say that why defeat is the way to go. And if you think like, but Armin, this is unrealistic, you're so radical. Like, I've already responded to all your claims, so I don't know if I want to go through all of that right now. I'll just go through what Rob is saying today and see how I could respond to what Rob is saying. So Rob is saying, I personally am much more on the side of defeat. So great, Rob is on my team, right? However, I can see both possibility happening in the future congruently. If people in the Muslim world start leaving Islam in the very large numbers, I can see a possible situation where some Muslims respond to this by advocating reform in an effort to stop the bleeding. Do you think this could happen in the future? Do you think it's more likely that Muslims will double down on oppressing and persecuting ex-Muslim in response to mass apostasy? Okay, so I think Rob is misunderstanding my what I'm saying. Okay, of course reform is going to happen at the same time as people leaving Islam. I never said that's not going to happen. I'm also even not against that happening. Okay, I also think that's a positive side effect. Okay, but I think that's a positive side effect because we're pushing hard against Islam, not because we're attempting to reform Islam. Okay, so let me make it clear. if people are desperately trying to reform Islam as a reaction to the world progressing past Islam and other religions, that's a sign of us moving in the right direction. Okay. However, the things that is forcing Islam to try, for some Muslims to try to reform Islam, right? The forces that is the actions that is forcing that is either activism against Islam or the popularity of ideas that are superior to Islam. These are not happening because of people who are pushing for a different interpretation of Islam. In fact, those people are doing more harm than good by keeping Islam more relevant. Okay, so people reforming Islam is a, there's a positive side to it and there's a negative side to it. The positive side of watching people try to reform Islam is the fact that we know that this is a sign of Islam becoming less relevant and not being able to compete with modern day standards. And as a desperate attempt to keep it relevant, people are trying to reform it. So it shows that it's working. Okay, it shows that our attempts, the desperation shows that we're moving in the right direction, right? However, it's also a negative because even though it's a sign of something good happening, it by itself is negative because the reform itself will mean that Islam will stay with us longer, right? So we could celebrate it happening in two ways, because celebrate it happening because it's a sign of something good, celebrate it happening also because at the end of the day, some people being more secular, being more less anti-woman, less homophobic, less transphobic, more for peace, that's always a good thing, right? So we could celebrate it like that, but we shouldn't be endorsing it, because what got us there was not people pushing for reform. What got us here is either people pushing against the religion or people just providing better values and ideas compared to Islam. Those are the things that it forced these people to try to reform. So we shouldn't, the reform itself is not the answer. It is a result of something better, but the action that you should be put, even if you want to see more reforms like this, right? The action you should be pushing for is taking an aggressive stance against Islam, because this is a side product of that. Okay, but the reform itself, I don't, is also very negative because it's an attempt to keep this backward ideology with us longer. If people didn't reform, it's not like they would remain radical. If people didn't reform, what would happen is more people would be leaving Islam. The alternative to not reforming is not people being radical. The alternative to people not reforming would be abandonment of Islam. Because people are not, most people are not that crazy to be radical. Okay, I'm sorry, like I'm sorry to all these bigots who think like every Muslim is like a potential radical that is about to like go choppy. That's not the case. Okay, most people are incapable of being that radical. Most people, if confronted with these ideas, if they're pushed to the limits to understand that this is what you have to do if you want to be true Muslim, like if you want to be not a true Muslim, if you want to really abide by Islam, they're not going, in this day and age, they're not going to maintain Islam. They're going to just like give up on it, or just become nominal Muslims, right? So we have, fundamental Muslims and nominal Muslims, minimalist Muslims and reform Muslims, and then we have ex-Muslims, right? So I think like not having reform would make some fundamental Muslims to either turn to nominal Muslims or ex-Muslims. They would not turn to reform Muslims or radical Muslims, right? I think those are the options. And nominal Muslims is just as good, by the way, or cultural Muslims as well, right? Cultural Muslims is basically pretty good. I really, okay, so this is why I endorse the process of secularization rather than reform, right? Reform means keep the religion, give up the practices. Secularization means keep the harmless practices, the rituals, but give up the belief, right? Which will produce cultural Muslims who are just following, this is their cultural identity. They might not even believe in any of this. They're participating in AIDS, in Ramadan, just like some people participate in Christmas, but this is not a part of the belief structure. So if you think like a lot of people emotionally are not ready to give up their community and culture, what I advocate is a secularization process which produces cultural Muslims. I do not endorse reform, which produces reformed Muslims who are basically still defending the Quran, still defending the Hadith. The belief needs to go. If you want to keep the rituals, give up the belief. I think that's a good process. That's secularization. If you want to give up some practices but keep the belief, that is dangerous, because the belief is the problem. The belief is the danger, right? Does that make sense? Let me look at the last part of what you're saying. Do you think this could happen in the future? Do you think it's more likely that Muslims will double down on oppressing and persecuting ex-Muslim in response to mass apostasy? No, of course not. I think the opposite. I think if you have mass apostasy, more Muslims will be exposed to ex-Muslims. Guys, Muslims, just like the rest of us, have compassion and sympathy, and it's easier to, and just like the rest of humans, the demonization of a certain group happens easier when you're not exposed to them. When you don't see them, when they're demonized by people who are inside your group, but without you being exposed to them directly yourself. Okay. In fact, the more Muslims turn into ex-Muslims, the more tolerant Muslims are going to be of ex-Muslims, because the more they're going to notice their friends, their colleagues, their brothers, their sisters, their children, their parents, they have no choice about being more tolerant, because they're human beings, and they see the people that they are part of their community become ex-Muslim. It's much easier to demonize ex-Muslims when you don't know them, when you haven't met them, when you don't talk to them. Okay, the more ex-Muslims we have, it's just like the LGBT. In United States, for example, or other Western countries, when more people came out of the closet as LGBT, the process of normalization and acceptance of it was like so fast and exponential. And I can bet, I'm almost certain that once we hit a certain mass of ex-Muslims, right? Once most Muslims have met an ex-Muslims in their personal life, not on YouTube, but in their personal lives, the apostasy will become so normalized in the Muslim world. And that's what we want. Like, we're gonna get there way before we get a majority ex-Muslims. Okay, we're going to get to a situation where majority of Muslims are okay with ex-Muslims. We're gonna get there way sooner. Right? Oh, Secular Jihadists saying, I think that is spot on. Oh, thank you. Is that a response to me? Or were you talking to somebody else? Okay, let's go to I think I answered this question. Okay, let's go to D's question. Yep. Secular Jihadists saying, normalize atheism, normalize apostasy. Oh, wait, is Sterling trying to pick up Nagar? Oh my God. What's happening in the live chat? Okay. Let's go to D's question. D saying, some sources are reporting that the Biden administration is considering taking the IRGC off the U.S. government's foreign. Okay, I don't know if I want to read this word because YouTube be sensitive, so I'm going to say foreign terrorist organization list, or let's say foreign radical organization list. Okay, so guys, from now, if I ever say radical, I'm referring to this T word. Okay, your thoughts. Okay, so I heard this, and I also heard the opposite of this. Okay, so right now the nuclear talks are going through. I mean, they keep going on pause and then back on, and then pause and back on. So it's like, depending on what you're listening, when you're listening, they might be happening right now or not happening right now. But it seems like everything has been agreed upon between United States and Russia and China and everybody else and Iran. Again, I should say the Islamic Republic and Biden. Okay, so yeah, but just bear with me. Okay, um, there's just this last point that they can't seem to agree on. That it seems like Khamenei really wants, and United States is like, no, 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 no way. Is removing IRGC from the terrorist list. Okay, um, that's the last. Okay, so for Iran to accept the deal, they want this, and the Biden administration is saying no way. Okay, so I heard some people saying the Biden administration is going to give in and remove IRGC from the list. But I also heard some people saying that the Biden administration has said there's no way they're going to remove, they're going to give in to this. I even heard Rob Malley say that this is not going to happen. But and I've also heard some people. I also heard Iran's foreign ministry come out on TV saying that he has word from IRGC, because it seemed like this is the both of the red line, right? The Islamic Republic is saying that if you don't remove IRGC from the list, there's no deal. And the United States is like, this is our red line. We're not going to remove IRGC from the list, right? So this is a major red line. This is seems like to be the only thing right now stopping the deal from going through. So what happened just recently is that the foreign ministry of Iran came on TV and said it seemed like the foreign ministry in Iran was bending the knee, right? Like was accepting not removing IRGC, because he came on TV and he said that the IRGC people have talked to him and they said that they're willing to sacrifice themselves. And we're like, if you need to sacrifice the IRGC for making this deal go through, go ahead. We give you the green light, okay? And a whole bunch of hardliners were like, what the like the reaction to that was massive. Okay, a lot of radicals like, what is the difference between the Raisi administration and the Rouhani administration? If we would have been crucifying the Rouhani administration if we heard this coming from them, and now we're hearing this coming from the Raisi administration, like, are you kidding us? Like, there is no way IRGC would have told you this. This is not something that IRGC would agree with, right? It seemed like the Iranian side is thinking like there is no way they're going to have a deal unless they accept that the IRGC is not going to be removed from their list. So they were like testing. So I think you don't want this to come out. So I think like the foreign ministry in Iran, he was doing a test for Khamenei, because Khamenei doesn't want to say that himself, because a lot of religious hardliners in Iran would be like pulling their hair out. So I think the foreign ministry kind of like sacrifice his popularity to see what the reaction is going to be in Iran, if they'd be like, can we just like have the deal for now and not have IRGC removed? And the answer from the hardliners was a unanimous like, no way, you are betraying us, you are the Rouhani regime itself if you do this to us. Okay, so apparently there's no tolerance for that. But there also seems to be no tolerance on the US side, because it's not just Republicans that are warning the Biden administration that you cannot remove the IRGC from the list. It's also a whole bunch of Democrats who are like, what the hell are you thinking? Like, we can't remove. Guys, there is no bigger terrorist group than IRGC right now in the world. I mean, if you don't consider, I mean, some people are going to say like, "Whoa, what about the United States?" I'm not talking about state war. Okay, that's war. I'm talking about, there's a specific definition for terrorist activity. Okay, and when it comes to the state sponsor of terror, the biggest one in the world is right now IRGC. Like, there's not that many terrorist groups that the IRGC is not supporting, right? IRGC is funding and supporting Hezbollah, Hamas, Hashd Shabi, a whole bunch of, like, if you want to create a list of terrorist group that the IRGC is supporting, it would actually be easier if you make a list of terrorist group that the IRGC is not supporting. That would be faster. Okay, so removing IRGC from the list would be like very, it would make the list meaningless. Like, obviously, if anybody deserved to be on the list, it would be IRGC, right? So there's a huge back. So basically, both governments, both Biden administration, is getting a whole bunch of politicians in the United States telling them, "Don't you dare even think about removing IRGC," right? And the the Raisi administration in Iran and Khamenei is also getting pressure from all the hardliners in Iran. Don't you dare accept a deal unless they remove IRGC from the list. So I don't know how this is going to end. Okay, let's see who budges, right? Who gives in. Um, I don't know who. It seems like Iran is the first one to give the sign that they might give in, right? But given what the foreign minister just came out and said on TV, and oh, by the way, the IRGC just came out and recently also said, IRGC guys, IRGC, people don't know what the IRGC is. IRGC is the Sepah Pasdaran. Iran has two main military branches. The more ideological one is IRGC, and this IRGC is the one that is almost taking over the entire economy and the entire government of Iran. Okay, and that's significant. I will tell you that as well. So IRGC also came out to this the foreign minister and said, like, we never said, your interpretation of what we said has been very wrong. We never said that. So I think the foreign minister had to come out and take back some of his word and apologize for misinterpreting. I don't know. So I don't know if he actually apologized, but he took back some of his words, right? But guys, you have to understand that if IRGC is still sanctioned as like a terrorist group, technically all of Iran will still be sanctioned. Well, I mean, not all of it, but like most of it, right? Because you have to understand that the dominance of IRGC within Iran is becoming more and more and more and more. Like, these people have controlled most of Iran's economy. They have their tentacles everywhere. And now they're moving past just being one of the two military branches, two of the armed forces in Iran. They're creeping into everything. They're creeping into presidency. I mean, they tried to creep into presidency last year, but maybe they'll make a better effort next year. They're creeping into the office of the supreme leader. They're creeping into every single mayor's office. Like, their mayors are becoming governors. Everything is becoming IRGC in Iran, right? So if they keep growing like this, Iran will be turned into a land ruled by mullahs to a land ruled by generals, like army, like this becoming a military dictatorship, okay, rather than an Islamic dictatorship. It would be as Islamic military dictatorship, right? So, like, basically, at some point, it seems like turbans are going to be replaced with boots, right? That's the effort, that's the movement, the directions things are seeming to be going, right? So for IRGC to remain under sanctions in that situation means that even if Iran is removed from sanctions, every single deal, every single trade that IRGC has its tentacles in will still be subject to sanctions because they are a terrorist group, right? And also, it's a lot of times it's ambiguous whether IRGC is involved in a deal or not involved in a deal, because they're not very transparent, as you can imagine, right? So even if you remove the sanctions from Iran, a lot of companies who want to deal with Iran, given that they don't know if IRGC is involved or not involved, they were like, I'm not going to trade with you. IRGC is a terrorist group, and they might be part of the deal, and our company now is going to be blacklisted from international trade because we just dealt with a terrorist group, right? So even if you remove the sanctions, a lot of companies personally will decide, a lot of banks, a lot of financial institutions, a lot of energy companies will like, we don't want to deal with Iran even without the sanctions because IRGC is still on sanction, and we don't know who we're dealing with. If we deal with Iran, we might be dealing with IRGC, right? So this is why the Iranian government really wants to insist on removing IRGC from the sanctions, because the sanctions are technically still in effect if IRGC is still part of the terrorist group, right? So you can see how sensitive they are about this. But again, to answer this question, I don't know which side is winning. We'll see whether IRGC will be removed from the list or not. But whether it's removed or not, there's going to be, like, one side is going to have to be answerable to a whole bunch of people. Well, like, this has been a red line for Khamenei. Okay, so if IRGC is not removed and deal goes through, I don't know because Khamenei said we will not negotiate with Americans, and now they're technically negotiating with Americans, and people are kind of trying to save face by saying, well, he said we, by not dealing with Americans, by not negotiating with Americans, he meant not directly, and we're not talking to them directly. So technically, what he said is true. I don't know how they're going to save Khamenei is going to save face if they go with the deal without IRGC being removed. Like, he's going to be very embarrassing, very embarrassing. Okay. But if IRGC is removed, I don't know how Biden is going to save face. But how Biden is going to go explain to the world that, we just removed the world's biggest sponsor of terror from terrorist group, right? It's going to be like, it's going to be and I think what Biden is going to say is like, guys, we need to move out of the Middle East, and for us to move out of the Middle East, we need to have this deal, and there's no way to have this deal without doing this. And this is like what we needed to do. Like, we need energy, we need to pivot to Asia, we need to all of that. Okay, so our hands were tied, and maybe he'll just take a hit to his. Maybe he's just not running a second term anyway. So he's like, this is something that is very unpopular, and I need to do it anyway. So I already took a hit with the Afghanistan situation, even though that was necessary. I'll take another popularity hit with this, even though this is necessary. So that might be how he will. I sacrifice my popularity because these are necessary things to do, right? Yeah, so that might be how they will excuse it. But again, which side is going to win on this? I honestly can't tell. Let me see what you guys are saying. Oh, yes, exactly. Susanna is pointing this out. Yeah, Israel would lose its mind. Imagine the most existential crisis threat to. Imagine your main ally, which is the United States, the main country that's supposed to be a defender of Israel, comes out and announces IRGC, which is the greatest existential threat to Israel. If United States comes on record and saying that we don't think this is a terrorist group, imagine, like, yeah, you're right, Susanna. Israel would be like, what are you doing? These people are openly admitting that they want to wipe me out, and you are openly telling the world that they are not a terrorist group. Like, guys, it would be, I don't know. Yeah, people would be losing their mind. But I also see how Biden is like stuck in a, because Biden has been voted in partly to move out of the region and partly to bring back the JCPOA deal. Like, this was his promise, right? And if this is standing in his way, and there's no way to do the deal without doing this, like, I can't. It's not. It's hard to be in this position. Like I'm just saying, like, even if you are against Biden removing the IRGC from the list, I just hope you understand that this is not very easy. It's not an easy decision. Like, they need to, like, Biden's administration has promised to make the JCPOA deal happen, and the whole pivot to Asia requires this. Even though a pivot to Asia seems more and more unlikely with with everything that is happening in the Middle East and Ukraine, it's becoming more and more impossible. But at some point, they want to do that. Anything? God, I wish I had Susanna here to highlight some of these questions. Okay, I'm just going to move on to the next question. Okay, here comes the major essay / oh, wow, we got new questions. Okay, guys, these are questions coming in while we're doing the stream. Amazing. Okay, so we're going to be spending most of our time on Patreon questions today. Okay, so Mo just sent me an essay. Okay, this is not even a question. There's not a single question mark in this question, Mo. This is this essay. Guys, can you like ask me questions? This is a Q&A. This is not like you making an announcement. Look, there's not a single question here. God damn it. All right, I'm going to read it. But guys, try to keep your questions shorter, please. And also try to make it an actual question, okay? But I'm going to read it for now. Mo is saying, last week Sam Harris discussed his change of view on nationalism from what he used to think as political tribalism, which was previously something that he thought we need to outgrow. in his talk with Noah Harari. On his podcast, he discussed the importance of citizenship and importance of connection with local community and trust, capitalized trust. What is your current position? Okay, there's an actual question here. What is your current position with regards to Iranian nationalism as presented by people like Khosrow Farvahar, who came on your show? Oh, by the way, he came on our Persian show for people who are wondering who this is. This was a Farsi stream. Who came on your show and suggested the importance of having the many tribes in Iran unite under their historical umbrella of a father-like figure like a king or a shah. So there's a question mark missing here. Okay. Khosrow, for example, argues that the king would be similar to a permanent ombudsman who would protect the concept of nationalism. Khosrow argues that non-permanent politicians are similar to a tenant. Okay, to tenants, not to a tenants, to a tenant who come to take care of themselves, not necessarily to take care of the nation as a king would. The Shah would have the opportunity to resign, for example, and would be selected initially by a consensus until one of the kings decides to resign, as we have in places like Sweden or UK. We just got a super chat, by the way. Thank you, Secular Sekai. So this is a huge ass question I need to answer. Secular Sekai is saying mini question. Okay, I will start this and I will get back to this question, Secular Sekai. Thank you for your super chat. Okay, so this is a major question. And I have to spend some time on it, right? So I don't know what exactly Sam Harris had said, so I'm not going to talk about his views. I'm just going to talk about my views. I think you misunderstand a lot of things, okay? I am against nationalism if you define nationalism as any form, any sense of superiority of land and people. That's what I'm against. I am not against nationalism if by nationalism you mean the understanding of the importance of the concept of nation states and borders. Okay, the invention of the idea of a nation state. By the way, this whole nation state is a European idea. Okay, the things that you think is ancient Iranian history, that concept of those concepts of sense of belonging or Iranian identity, that is different from the concept of nation state or nationalism. Or these are modern concepts that were invented in Western Europe, and these concepts have been proven to be extremely useful as a way to moderate countries' geographical areas, right? And I am very much in support of all of that. Okay, the nation state model has brought to the world a degree of peace and prosperity and trade that the history of mankind has never experienced. And this is a very great invention, and I'm very much in support of it. Okay. And this is why I'm very much against, changing of borders unless in very unique situations and done through peaceful ways. And I'm also very much, I very much understand the importance of respecting each country's territory and respecting their borders and respecting their sovereignty and self-determination and all of those things. Okay. So yeah, borders, I support borders and I support nations, not because they're sacred, not because there's something holy about them, not because I value certain groups of people within a certain geographic area, within certain borders more than other people. There's nothing sacred about any group of people or any land or any border. I just understand that the model is extremely useful and needs to be defended. Okay, So that form of nationalism, I am very much in favor of, and I defend that. I also understand that when you draw borders and define a nation, there needs to be something to unite a group of people around, and to have a definition of what makes these people American, Iranian, Ukrainian, Russian, or whatever. I mean, not in an ethnic way, but in a national, whatever nation is being defined. Okay, so my main issue, I understand that you can't just draw borders based on just material benefits to each side and coming up with what's fair, who deserves what part of the land, and just make a purely monetarily calculation. There also needs to be an identity that needs to be defined beyond the natural resources and the geopolitical considerations when it comes to how you define borders and what it means for you to be a citizen of a country or not. Okay, I understand that identity needs to be created, but I am very much against creating that identity around ethnicity, history, or culture. I think identities can be born around ideas and values, right? This is, for example, why one of the easiest nationalisms that I could defend right now is the Ukrainian nationalism, right? So you think like I am very much against nationalism, but like right now, the nationalism that I'm experiencing, that I'm witnessing in Ukraine, is a form of nationalism that is easy to defend. Okay, it's about respecting borders. It's about respecting the a nation state against aggression, and it's also about creating an identity around certain values. Okay, values that have become values that have proven to be beneficial, that have utility for the citizens of the country, right? So, for example, if you want to create have a nation called Iran, if you want to fight for this country, if you want to defend it, I don't see value in defending it based on, oh, this is our historic motherland, oh, this land is sacred, these borders are sacred, or any ethnicity, like we're Fars or something, or any crap like that. I think that it needs to be like this is a nation, these are its values, and these values are beneficial to the people who live it, and because that's our identity, these values are our identities, and we defend this land because we defend these values, because these borders are, because of the values that we have defined as a people, we have selected these officials to represent us based on these values, and these borders protect us and the people within it, and by extension the values that they're trying to uphold, because it's benefiting the people in it, right? And it's easy. I always used to say that, and people didn't understand what I'm saying, especially on the Persian show, because people just say like, oh, this is historically this has been us, so that's why we need to defend it, or like this is like the land of Ferdowsi, or like land is sacred, or like this is. And also they had a whole bunch of like ethnic pride arguments for why this needs to be defended. But now with Ukraine, it's easier for me to show what I've always meant for like forever, right? Ukraine is defending its land against tyranny. Okay, it's a battle of ideas, it's a battle of values. This nation is a nation that wants democracy. Okay, it wants enlightenment values. We literally have a war right now between tyranny and enlightenment values. This is a nationalism that I could easily defend. Okay, it's not based on culture, it's not based on history, it's not based on ethnicity. Okay, the people are voting for better values, and they are willing to defend it with their own blood. Does that make sense? Let me see what you're saying. Okay, so let me go to the second part about the monarch and the king. So yeah, Iranian nationalism depends. I'm willing to defend certain forms of Iranian nationalism, but a lot of the Iranian nationalism that I'm saying is very cringe, right? It's a lot of Iranian nationalism. So here's the difference between my nationalism that I defend and a lot of Iranian nationalism that I'm saying. Okay, a lot of Iranians have made the land so sacred that they're willing to get to sacrifice people's happiness to defend the land, right? They're willing to give up everything, including their own people's future, their own people's happiness. Okay, for me, nationalism is a tool. The goal is not the land. The goal is the happiness of the people. Okay, so borders and nation states are a tool. The end goal is happiness of citizen. But I suspect that for a lot of Iranian nationalists, the goal is nationalism, even if it comes at the expense of people's happiness. Like, and by that I mean, like, and also this whole idea that bigger is better, right? Like they want, for example, if I'm against changing Iran's borders, is because I know that will cause civil war and a lot of people will suffer, right? But for that reason, I'm both against changing Iran's borders for it to become smaller or bigger. I would be against it making it bigger as well. But a lot of Iranian nationalists, they're against Iran becoming smaller, but they would love it if Iran becomes bigger, right? But because my reason against Iran becoming smaller is changing of borders, I'm also against it becoming bigger. But these people are so in love with just expansion and dirt and ground. Like they just think like even if it comes at the expense of whatever blood that they have to spill, if Iran becomes bigger, that must be better. So you see how dangerous that form of nationalism could be. Like when you sacrifice people for land, I rather sacrifice land for the sake of people than the other way around, right? Okay, Mo is saying fair point. Oh wow, so Mo is agreeing with me. Okay, but let me see if you agree with me once I start attacking the monarchy. Okay, so that was okay. So now going to the king or the shah, because a lot of nationalists in Iran support having monarchy back, right? So you're saying Khosrow says like king could be like an ombudsman. I don't know if that I'm pronouncing this right, but basically somebody that people bring all their last complaints to. I think that's what it means, right? Who would protect the concept of nationalism. Okay, the concept of nationalism does not need to be defended by a king. In fact, a king would be the worst protector of nationalism. If by nationalism you mean a guardian, like if you want to guard your borders and your nation state, what protects that is a good army and good laws. Okay, and also serving your people. In fact, a king would be a symbolic, emotional appeal for people to defend the nation because the nation is not doing its job. So when a nation is not providing the utility that the people of the country deserve, with the protection that the people of a country deserve, and the laws that the people of a country deserve, and to be able to keep your people still defending your nation and your borders, you have to appeal to culture, to history, to nostalgia, and to emotional things. Basically, because their tables are empty, their security is being sacrificed, and their laws are oppressive. So people are not content, and you still want them to be nationalists. What do? You talk about the past. You talk about their ethnicity. You talk about their blood being more precious. You talk about them having a king and how glorious. Look how extravagant and how beautiful. Look at his crown. Look at this wedding. Look how beautiful it is. Look at all this, like, like be proud of this. So because when you don't have anything meaningful to be proud of, you just give them a toy, something shiny to look at, and be content with that. Okay, so I think this is like robbing something from the people. I don't like this. I think if you want the people, I think, look, I mean, Ukrainians don't have a king, but look how national look how much they're defending the nation. Okay, you don't need a king to make people want to defend a nation. You just have to give them hope for a future. You have to give them values that makes a country worth fighting for. The Ukrainians are sacrificing themselves because they know the values that they're defending right now are values that is going to make the lives of their children better. They know that this is going to be a better future for them. They don't need somebody with a shiny crown sitting on a shiny chair to be like, wow, okay, I will fight for this country. You don't need that. Okay. Suzanne is saying, I will admit the Shah did have good style. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So you don't need a king. And then you continue and saying, Khosrow argues that non-permanent politicians are similar to tenants who come to take care of themselves, and not necessarily take care of the nation as a king would. That is completely backwards. That is completely the other way around. Okay, I understand the problems of having politicians change every 4 years, and I understand that is causes chaos to some extent. Okay, because you're dealing with a country with a president, and all of a sudden all the deals you have with one president, it goes away because now you have a new president. Okay, I understand the inefficiency of that. However, the inefficiency of having a politician, any politicians that does not change, is astronomically higher. Okay, this is having somebody that does not change makes them not, the fact that they are secure with, like, a better example would be having somebody works for your company that cannot be fired. Okay, your example doesn't make any sense. Imagine if you have a hired an employee, okay, and you deem this employee unfireable. What do you think their performance is going to be like if they cannot be fired, when they're not questionable, when people cannot change them, when their performance has no impact on whether or not they stay or not. Okay, as inefficient as democracy could be, the fact that people can change them, the fact that they have to be answerable to people every election, means that their performance matters. I know it doesn't matter as much as a lot of people would want, but it still matters. It still matters a lot more than a king that cannot be replaced. So you're saying, no, like you're saying, like the tenant, you're saying the politicians who are not permanent, they don't take care of they take care of themselves, not necessarily take care of the nation. You're This is the exact opposite, because the fact that they want to be elected means that they have to have at least somewhat of a good performance. If this would be what you're saying, it would be more true if they could not be replaced. If they were permanent, then they would take more care of themselves, because you can't do anything to replace them. So what you're saying is the opposite of what reality is. Okay, so let's go to the last point. The Shah would have the opportunity to resign, for example, and would be selected. The opportunity to resign, so he has to decide. The people have to decide, not the Shah himself. The people have to be able to decide to choose their own leaders. It shouldn't be up for the Shah to resign. It has to be up for the people to be able to fire the representatives that are not doing their job, or not elect them. For example, and would be selected initially by a consensus until one of the kings decide to resign, as we have in place, like Sweden or UK. Okay, so here's an interesting thing. A lot of people are saying like the Shah could be chosen by a consensus. What they say is like the first Shah would be chosen by a consensus and not by the people. It would be by a committee of other dictators that would choose the Shah. And even though the first Shah would be chosen by a consensus, the rest would be heredity. The worst possible way of choosing a politician to represent the country is based on like, oh, it just came, that guy did this, came out of my dick. So here's your new politician, head of state. Why is he Why is he fit to be your king? Because it came out of my balls. That's my reason. It came out of my balls, guys. That's all the reason why you need. So yeah, the first king might be chosen by consensus, but every single other king after him would be by, out of my balls argument, right? Which is the most insane, ridiculous. Like, this is indefensible. It's indefensible in the 21st century. Anybody suggesting this, it's ridiculous. It's laughable for a representative of people being chosen based on, like, oh yeah, I just, it's just my, it's my cum. Okay, so there you go. Here's your new king, right? And you're saying, like, well, it could be like, unless he decides to resign. Like, okay, well, great. I hope the king, like, let's just put the entire hopes and dreams of a country dependent, rest upon the the goodness of a king who resigns if he's not fit to hold office, like, to, or to be our king. Like, yeah, let's just rely on that. Yeah, let's just hope that he resigns if he's not fit. Amazing. Yeah, it's, the whole thing is ridiculous, guys. Come on, this is not Game of Thrones, guys. Like, if you want a monarchy, just go buy like a Princess Barbie thing, just pretend like you're buying that for your kid. Just play with princesses at your home, put some crowns on their head, just buy like a little uh, palace dollhouse, and just go, like, just like, if you really need monarchy, just play with your dolls and be like, put them on a throne, or just watch Game of Thrones. Watch Game of Thrones. If you just, yeah, if you really love monarchy and kings and crowns, and, like, just, like, get that need, you scratch that itch, just watch Game of Thrones. It's the best way. Just don't mess up the future of a country just because you love kings and queens so much. Okay, this is not a game. Okay, this is not just like, this is not something like, oh, nostalgia, we used to have a king and it was glorious. That's history. Go read history if you like that. Stop missing a country's future just because you're so attached to having somebody with a crown to drool over. Okay, like, it's pathetic. It's ridiculous. Yeah, or play D&D. I don't know about that. All right, so here's another question by Mo. Mo saying, you have an assumption that London-based Farsi media like Manoto or BBC Farsi. Okay, so I should give some context for this question before I read it. So there's a huge conspiracy in Iran that BBC Persian, and another channel called Manoto is working with the Islamic Republic of Iran and is basically working as their propaganda arm. Okay, I know that sounds ridiculous, but Mo agrees with that. Okay, I think Mo also is thinking I am ridiculous for suggesting that, I don't believe that. Okay, so yeah, so let's read that. Susanna's all right, so Mo is saying, you have an assumption that London-based Farsi media like Manoto or BBC Farsi, oh wow, Iran International as well. Okay, Iran International are against the Iranian tyrant regime, but we know historically that these London-based Farsi media were directly behind the Iranian looting of so he's talking about the revolution, the Islamic Revolution of 1979, to ensure Europe and America get their cheap oil instead of having to pay petroleum that Shah of Iran was creating. Okay, first of all, just this first paragraph is kind of insane. Okay, I mean, I thought Iran International is funded by the Saudis. So you're saying just because they're London, just because BBC historically supported Khomeini, now every single Farsi news outlet that is based in London must be pro-Islamic Republic because of that historical reality. Even Iran International, who's funded by the Saudis. So you're saying the Saudis are funding a media outlet that is supporting the Islamic Republic of Iran, and your evidence for that is that your only evidence for that is that they're based in London? Yes, you're saying yes? Yeah, you're in the live chat, you're saying yes. Your entire evidence for why this is Iran International, which has been a thorn on the Islamic Republic's side, you still think that these are Iran International is supportive of the Islamic Republic, even though like most of the news that we get out of Iran, most of the Iranian news that we're getting against the Islamic Republic comes from Iranian International, you still think that these are hidden agents of the Islamic Republic, and your evidence for that is that their offices are in London. That's your evidence. Do you have any other evidence? Like, okay, you're saying Iran International hires Iran, the Islamic Republic journalists. Okay, if by hire you mean having guests on that they pay, because they pay people who come on their show, Iran International brings on guests from all sides, including anti-regime sides. They want to provide arguments from all sides, so that's what they do. Like, I mean, that's what they should be doing. And like Mo's like, how simple are you? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very simple. That I'm not buying into your conspiracy. Oh my God. Okay. They constantly bring mullahs. Well, good. They should bring mullahs. I want to hear their side. And they challenge the mullahs. Hey, Mo, we bring mullahs. We have had mullahs on on our Persian show on the Farsi channel. You're like, Khosrow was never there. Atin never there. You never there. Okay, first of all, I am very aggressive about the way I talk. So I know, like I burned the Quran. Obviously, they're not gonna have people like me on there, okay? But they had, like, you were never there. They had Masih Ali Najad there. They had so many people, so many aggressively anti-regime people on there. You're insane. You're being insane. And you're like, oh, you're being so simple. Yes, of course they're gonna bring people from the other side. It wouldn't be a news agency if they only brought one side. It would be just a propaganda. It would be like, it would be, what kind of a news channel would you have if they didn't bring anybody from the other side to come defend their position? This is crazy conspiracy. This is like insane crazy conspiracy. Okay, let's continue. Let me read the rest of the question. In fact, Khomeini was based and protected by France while dissidents against. Yeah, I know the history. I know that BBC had a major impact. BBC Persian had a major, no, the BBC as a whole had a major impact in getting Khomeini's audio from France to Iran and helping the Islamic Revolution of 1979. I know that. You're like, what? And you're like, why don't you want to learn the lesson? I know this stuff. Okay, I know this stuff, but I'm not as simple as you to think that this will basically mean that everything that comes out of London must be pro-Islamic Republic. Okay, I also, even BBC Persian has many different people working with different ideologies. Some of them are reformers. Some of them are anti-regime. Some of them, they're being a reformer and being pro-regime. You could hear that is going to affect the way they speak about, So I understand that about BBC Persian, okay? But I'm not like black and white like you to think like, oh, BBC Persian is just pro-regime. Even BBC Persian had many anti-regime people as guests on there, and many hosts there arguing many times against regime, against Khamenei himself, okay? But yet they also had guests on that was pro-regime. I want. That's good. I want that. I want to hear what pro-regime people have to say. It's actually make our job easier. We have to listen to what pro-regimes have to say if we want to be more effective against their positions. That's why I see BBC Persian as an asset. Thank you for bringing pro-regime people on, so I know what they have to say. So I'm more equipped against their arguments. God damn it, you guys! What do you want? You want to live in a bubble? You want to just hear, you like, oh no, if your news agency has to only say my talking points, and everything you say has to be something that I agree with, and if you bring anybody on that disagrees with my position, that means you are the agent of the enemy. Unbelievable. See, Negar agrees with me. If Negar agrees with me, that means I'm right. And then consider, why don't you want to admit who the real, like I said. So most saying we see their arguments every day on Iranian news channels. Okay. Well, I don't watch Iranian TV. So thank you, BBC Persian, for showing me their arguments, because I want to see their arguments. Thank you so much, BBC Persian and Iran International. Okay. So where was I? And then it continues. Why don't you want to admit the real enemies of Iranian people? Well, the real enemies of Iranian people. See, you guys are just like, you know who you sound like, Mo? You know who you sound like? You sound like Khamenei right now. Because you guys are like, enemies, enemies, enemies. The world is not this black and white, okay? The world is like more complicated. I hear something sometimes when I'm watching BBC Persian, they say things that I just cringe. I'm like, what the hell? This was like I see some of their pro-regime arguments. So they have guests that say things about the regime that makes me want to break my screen, right? Okay, but I'm not like you. Like, oh my god, this means BBC Persian is the enemy. Okay, I don't see the world in black and white like you do. Okay, and then continues. Everyone is on the side of the Iranian. Oh my God! Look at this. Everyone is on the side of Iranian Islamic dictatorship. Okay, you know who you sound like? You sound like the Islamic Republic of Iran, who thinks like everything bad that happens must be like the Zionists. Okay, you just see the enemy everywhere. Okay, I'm telling you, just like a lot of people in the Islamic Republic, if they lose their shoe, they're like, oh, it was the Mossad stole my shoe. This is not a meme. This has actually happened. Somebody lost their shoe in their mosque and they blame the Mossad for it. Okay, you guys are still like that. Okay, I'm pretty sure if you lose your shoe, you're gonna be one of those people who's like, oh, it was the Islamic Republic of Iran who stole my shoe. Okay, and now here's the most funniest part of it. By the way, guys, like as you see, as if you're a patron, it's not going to give you immunity from me attacking. I don't know if this is going to reduce some incentives for people to become patrons, but you know, this is a page. I'm treating Mo like this, and he's a patron. I'm supporting us financially, and I'm attacking him like this. Okay, but this is how it's going to be. Okay, so just be warned that this is, if you're a patron, you're not going to get, I still going to attack your views. Okay, so the last part is saying, do you have a rebuttal or proof that foreign-based media supported by these nations want to help free the Iranian people? No, I don't. I don't think they want to free the Iranian people. I think they're a news agency and they want to report the news. What are you saying? First of all, you made two logical fallacies here. You're making a claim that they are agents of the Islamic Republic. So you're making the claim. You need to prove that. Okay. I'm not making a claim that they are the agent of the Iranian, like they are the BBC Persian is like a revolutionary force against the Islamic Republic. I didn't claim that. You're putting words, so you made a straw man, and you also misunderstand that the burden of proof is on your shoulders. You're making a claim that they are secret agents of the Islamic Republic, so you're the one who needs to provide the proof for that. Okay. And my claim is not that they are trying to free people. My claim is that they're just a news agency, and they're doing sometimes a good job reporting the news. Sometimes they're not doing a good job reporting the news. For example, the time that they were obsessed with talking about the royal family in the UK, that was like such a waste of time, especially on the Persian side of it. Sometimes they're doing a good job, sometimes they're not doing a good job, but I appreciate that they exist, especially Iran International. I can't believe, like, if you're I know that there's this conspiracy that BBC Farsi is like pro-Islamic Republic, but you're even extra cuckoo if you even think Iran International is also with the Islamic Republic. Like I don't know how far down this conspiracy lunacy have you gone, but if you even think Iran International is also with the Islamic Republic, simply because their offices are in London, then you have gone absolute cuckoo. Okay, you're insane. Okay. Let's continue. Okay, music guy saying, Armin, have you ever seen the collection of videos named Message to My Iranian Torturer, where former prisoners in Iran make a video directed to the people who interrogated and tortured them during their time in prison? If so, do you think about these videos and the press releasing them video? It's rather interesting. I have never seen those videos, music guy, but it sounds interesting. And I might take a look into it. So it seemed like during the stream, Mo is like adding more questions to the list. Let me see if he came here and adding more questions to the patron list. Is he like, where did it go? Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. Okay. So these are the last two parts that I'm going to read. Okay. And then I'm going to take a look at the live chat a little bit. Mo is saying this is from my friend Kia. Hey, this is cheating. Is Kia's not a patron? You're gonna be the messenger of people who are not patrons? What are you talking? Okay, so I'll answer this question, but you're supposed to be a patron to be able to ask these questions, okay? And this is all caps. So this is like you have to read this as if it's shouting. Should I shout because it's Mo? Do you want me to shout this because it's all cap? Should I shout? Okay. Oh, Kia will be a patron. Okay, so okay, Kia is going to become a patron. Okay. Do I need to shout? Okay. How come we didn't have significant problems with Islam under Shah? Is that good? Okay. Well, Kia, because Shah was not an Islamic theocrat, and the mullahs are. Short question, short answer. How about that? Was that good? All right. All right. I think that was good. Let's go to let's get to the last patron question. And okay, Mo is saying, as James Ramsey used to say, no matter how educated. Oh, I miss James Randi. Okay, as James Randi used to say, no matter how educated or smart you are, you can be deceived. Wait, is this a question, or are you gonna just lecture me about how stupid I am? This is why smart people like you is getting tricked. So okay, so this is addressed to me. Okay, apparently I am very smart and educated, but I'm being tricked. Okay, so Mo is saying this is why a smart person like you is getting tricked by people like Masume Ali. You mean Masih Ali Najad? Okay. Her name is now Masih Ali Najad. I don't know why you insist on using her old name. Okay, Masih Ali Najad. She's a fake journalist doing work that has put many innocent girls in Iran in jail. She's collecting funds in the US. Okay, I'm not going to read this if there's no evidence. You're just accusing Masih al-Najjar of things. These are just claims. I don't want to read. I don't want to give. So you're saying I am deceived for accepting claims without any proof to back it up. Okay, that's what you're saying. Because I have heard these claims and these accusations for a long time. Okay, and every time I ask for evidence and proof, people come up with the most ridiculous explanations and arguments and not a shred of evidence. Okay, so if I am deceived and fooled because of not accepting, accusations by a lot of people who are just jealous of Masih because of how effective she has been. So consider me deceived, I guess. Let me just read this with that. I do it by doing lawsuits regarding drilling of brothers. Like Masih. Yeah, like how evil of Masih al-Najjar for trying to push back against the Islamic Republic of Iran for putting her brother in jail. Like, are you serious? You're accusing, like, you're saying Masih al-Najjar is like hasn't done anything right before a sentence showing us that her brother is in jail for what she has done. They are punishing Masih al-Najjar by imprisoning her brother in Iran. How despicable and evil and disgusting do you have to be to not see the price that she's paying for all the things she's doing for the Iranian people? How ungrateful do you have to be? And then she tries to fight back with the only way possible, and for imprisoning her brother, she has no tools. Nobody is helping her. She just uses the only weapon she has against them, and you still criticize her for even doing that. Unbelievable. You guys don't deserve Masih al-Najjar. You don't deserve her. Like, not, no, Iranian people do, but the people who are against Masih Alinejad, after everything she has done, after everything she has suffered, you seriously don't deserve. You deserve her. Ask yourself, why is she so famous so quickly? Because she needs to be more famous. What do you mean? Ask myself. I have the answer. She has done amazing work. You're She has done amazing work. She has become the biggest headache for the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's why she's famous. In fact, she's not famous enough. It's because large funds from her from her former employer. Oh my God, you're insane! Look at this. You're more saying it's because large funds from her former employer, Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, is still behind her to this day. You're insane. Masih Alinejad works for Voice of America. Voice of America is a branch of United States government. Masih Alinejad is a U.S. citizen working in the United States. Do you really think you have discovered something that the CIA and FBI have missed? You're insane. The level of conspiracy theory lunacy here is like off the charts. So why are you so so now Mo is saying, why are you so naive talking to me? I am apparently being naive and innocent. Me to fall for such people who popped out of nowhere while you ignore people like Farokh Zad, Professor Ansari, and even Mr. Atabeki, who were the original media people fighting this regime. You guys are just jealous that the pro-monarchy people who have been working for 40 years haven't gotten the popularity that Masih got. The reason is your jealousy, your frustration doesn't mean just because they were first, that doesn't mean that they should be bigger. Their methods were ineffective. Their methods were not working. Masih Alinejad is getting more funding because her methods work, because she's more efficient. Yes, she's more popular than just because you were ahead, just because you started earlier. That doesn't mean you need to be more recognized. That just shows how pathetically ineffective your methods are. That means that you should be left behind. This proves that these people should be left behind. The fact that you think that the Islamic Republic of Iran is funneling money to Masih Alinejad, and that's the only explanation for her popularity, just show how insane you are. Okay? Her methods are much more effective, and that she gets fundraising for more people because people can relate to her. People can see that. In fact, I would like to open a fundraiser for her. Okay. But yeah, but the fact that you think that you have noticed that the Islamic Republic of Iran is sending money to Masih Alinejad, and the CIA is not hasn't noticed that, and they're even supporting her, and the U.S. government is still hiring her. The fact that this is your analysis shows that you're not somebody that should be taken seriously. Anyways, but I appreciate you being a patron though, so thank you for that, and I will continue answering your questions as a patron. But let me see what let me see if there's any live chat questions that I need to answer. Let me unstar all these patron questions. Okay, so Perfect Person is saying, are you with the invasion of Iran and Iraq? What? Are you with invasion? I don't know what this means. Are you with, I don't know, with invasion of Iran and Iraq? No, I'm not with invasion of any country unless it's a self-defense and it's absolutely necessary. So, for example, the invasion of Iraq, I would have been for it if Iraq actually had WMDs and if they were going to use it against other countries. If that was real, then I would be for the invasion of Iraq. But short of that, like, yeah, no, I'm also in favor of, supporting countries that are being attacked by an aggressor, but not to the point of invading the attacking country. In general, I think respecting borders in the modern era is a must, very unique, unless very unique situations. Like, for example, unless somebody is committing mass genocide, like World War II, on its own people, or if somebody is going to use weapons of mass destruction against another country. Very unique situations will make invasion justifiable, but most of the time, no. Okay. Somebody is asking, what happens when you die? Many things happens when you die. Everything that you're not involved with continues to happen. You just wouldn't be there to observe it. I mean, what happens to you when you die? Nothing happens to you when you die, because you're done. That's the end of you. Nothing. You cease to exist. If there's anything that could be defined as you, that would cease to exist. Hamad is saying, why do most Iranians leave Islam? I don't think it's most Iranians yet. It's a significant portion of Iranians, more significant than any other country, I think. But still not to the point where we could say most. Wait. Yeah, I think we could say most Iranians leave Iran now. Wait, can somebody remind me? The recent stats shows that most Iranians are leaving Islam, right? Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I still can't believe it, but it's right. Why? Because the Islamic Republic of Iran, because of the living under an Islamic regime and experiencing Islamic theocracy, and be like, yo, well, I don't want any of that. So thank you very much. So that's why. That's the reason. So it's thanks to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Are you a vegetarian? No, I am not. I eat fish almost every day. Have you seen the Will Smith, Chris Rock drama? Yes, of course. Who hasn't seen that? Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, do you want me to? Is that just a question? I think it was bad. I think any form of violence, unless it's self-defense, is bad. I don't know if you want me to go into more details about that, but that's all I have to say right now. Okay. Bobo saying opinions on. Oh yeah, here's opinions on Chris Rock Will Smith controversy. Opinions. I think. I mean, it's pretty simple, isn't it? Like, it's you shouldn't slap somebody for a joke. Like, I mean, isn't it that simple? I might have some interesting opinions about it, because Iranian social media went crazy with that. Let me know if you want me to do a stream on this, because the concept of gayrat was brought up on Iranian social media, because I don't know, gayrat is like loose, can be not very accurately, but the best translation to English would be honor, right? So, and the honor culture in Iran is being challenged a lot. A lot of people coming in Iran and using the hashtag that I am bi ghayrat, which means I have no ghayrat, because they basically as a way to challenge honor culture. And this Will Smith standing up and slapping somebody because he insulted his wife is making more conservative or more pro ghayrat, pro honor culture people in Iran, even some liberal pro honor culture people in Iran, come out and say, like, let's see, ghayrat hasn't died. Even Westerners understand the value of ghayrat. And then people pushing back against that. So there's like a fight happening between pro ghayrat and anti ghayrat people on Iranian social media. So let me know if you want me to highlight that and go through that. I could dedicate like a 20-minute video to that if you want. No Name is saying, yes, Armin, please do a stream. When I heard about the Will Smith thing, it reminded me of you talking about the honor culture. Oh wow, really? Okay, so you guys did make that connection. Okay, yeah, maybe I'll do a 20-minute video on how this was perceived on Iranian social media. And also, Secular Sekai just gave us another super chat. It's wow, thank you so much. A $1 super sticker, which is a smiley face. But here's another wait. So there's that. Here's another super chat from Secular Sekai, which is a mini question. The question is, what inspired the name Secular Jihadist? Well, I was coming up with a name. I wanted to call it the Atheist Jihadist, and at that time, Faisal was against it. He didn't like the word atheist. He thinks it was too aggressive. He thinks that atheism, you know. So I basically met halfway with him, calling it Secular Jihadists, which now I think actually was the better choice because we already have the Atheist Republic. I think Secular Jihadists would be it's a good platform to be promoting secularism and be more geopolitical oriented rather than the activities of Atheist Republic, which is more anti-ideological oriented, right? So I think like actually now that I think about it, Secular Jihadist was a better name. Yeah, and Jihadist part was basically to thinking how could you use the word secular or atheist next to something that very quickly communicates the nature of the focus of the channel, which is, around against and, or surrounding Islamic issues, right? So jihadists would be the fastest way to use just two words to show secular jihadists. Like you cannot be confused about what the focus of the channel is. And also it's very beautiful to have something jihadist, which is usually seen as something Islamic, right next to a word like secular, which sounds like the contrast between them is kind of interesting and fun, right? And also it brings attention to the fact that jihadist is a struggle, and Muslims constantly say like, oh, this is not supposed to be armed struggle, it could be any type of struggle. I mean, the argument against that, like, Adolf's book was also called My Struggle. So just because it could mean struggle, it doesn't mean that it's not referring to something nefarious or evil, right? But we basically use that definition. We could use that definition of jihad to be like, well, we're having a struggle for secularism. So that's why it makes it a secular jihad. So that's where the name comes from. Here's another question by Hamad saying, what would secularism do for Iran since Pahlavi secularism paved the way for Khomeini? Well, Pahlavi was not secular. Wait, we got a whole bunch of super chats. Hold on. Oh my god. I'll come back to that question. Thank you, Music Guy, for the 9.99 super chat saying it's an upside down 666. Thank you, Music Guy. I appreciate that. Well, upside down 666, that makes it something godly, no? Okay, but thank you for that. And we got a $20 super chat from Mo. Wow, 20 Canadian dollars super chat from Mo. Even after I attacked his views, he's still supporting us. That's very thank you for that. I don't know what to say, but appreciate that. I hope it seems like you don't mind me attacking your views. You're a Patreon and you're also supporting us with super chats. So that's mature of you, even though I don't agree with your conspiracy theories. I appreciate how you're open to criticism, and thank you again for the support. Okay, I'm gonna start this comment by D and start this comment by Nagar because it's a compliment of me, so obviously I have to read that. And Mo is saying more to come, bro. Well, thank you. I actually appreciate comments that are against me because they're more fun. Okay, cool. All right, so here's another comment, comment by Vikram. I'm going to star that. I'm going to answer that. So in total, we have 5. Oh my God, we have another super chat by Mustafa. A $2 super chat. Mustafa saying Ramadan, not Kareem. Okay, thank you so much for that, Mustafa. So appreciate that. Okay, so I'm just going to answer. It's been 2 hours, so I'm just going to answer only this last 5 questions or comments. Unless we get a super chat that is a question, I'm not going to add to the questions anymore. Okay. Okay, so this one. What would the secularism for Iran do, since Pahlavi secularism paved the way for Khomeini? Okay, so Pahlavi, the part of the Pahlavi that is paved the way for Khomeini is the lack of secularism. Okay, so you could actually argue that the positions Reza Shah and Mohammad Reza Shah, Reza Pahlavi and Mohammad Reza Pahlavi took against and in support of the mullahs kind of paved the way for, was partly like, I don't want to make it like this is a single factor, it's multifactorial, right? The many factors that led to the Islamic Revolution of 1979. One of them was the policies that the Pahlavi dynasty had with regards to the mullah, right? So the Reza Shah made many positions for forced secularism. Technically, forced secularism is not secularism at all, because secularism requires the government to stay out of religion. So you really can't have forced secularism. I mean, Reza Shah went out of its way to even like ban hijab. Okay, it's very interesting because Iran has been at a point in history the only country in the world that has banned hijab in public, while also being at some points in history the only country in the world to have hijab mandatory in public, right? Both of them within one generation, which is insane, right? We got another super chat. I'll get to that. So that's, you could see the mullahs, Shia mullahs, historically have been very pro monarchy. Okay, through the Safavid, through the Qajars, like maybe they were against individual shahs at some point, but in general they were supportive of monarchies, right? Um, so this is a new phenomenon where you see mullahs, Shia mullahs being anti-monarchs, fundamentally anti-monarchs, right? And partly what started that was this position by certain positions by Reza Shah, but also pro-liberation of women by Reza Shah and Mohammad Reza Shah was one of the main fundamental things that mobilized Khomeini to become the main opposition force against the Pahlavi dynasty, right? Um, Mohammad Reza Shah wasn't as aggressively anti-Mullah as his father Reza Shah was. And in fact, he kind of saw them as a weapon against the real enemy, which were the communists, right? So there are three forces in Iran. We had the white revolution, we had the black revolution, and we had the red revolution, right? The white revolution was the Shah, the monarchy, Muhammad Reza Shah. The red revolution were the communists, and the black revolution was the mullahs, right? Um, and the Shah saw the communists as the major threat, and he kind of wanted to, he saw, especially knowing history, knowing how the mullahs were a force to legitimize the monarchy, he didn't want to take as aggressive of a stand against the mullahs until they mobilized against him and it was too late. But he opened their hands and he gave them a lot of free, a lot of privileges and advantages. And the combination of Reza Shah and Muhammad Reza policies together had some contribution to why the Islamic Republic, the revolution happened, right? Um, Again, I'm not saying that's the only factor, but it is a contributing factor. But neither what Reza Shah did and Muhammad Reza Shah did could be seen, the effects of it on the power of the mullahs could be seen as secularism, because they either against the mullahs or with the mullahs they were involved in religious affairs. So that's not secularism. Okay, we got a whole bunch of super chats, so I'm gonna highlight those. I'm only gonna highlight super chats, I guess. Okay, let me see what these super chats are. But I'm gonna also finish Nagar, Vikram's, and Dee and Jack's questions, but also these super chats. Secular Sekai is saying $20 for AR GoFundMe and a big thank you to patrons. Thank you so much, Secular Sekai. Yeah, on Atheist Republic, we have a GoFundMe for our legal cases because we have been challenged by Hindutva legally. So we have a GoFundMe on Atheist Republic for that. So thank you so much, Secular Sekai, for donating $20 to that. Really appreciate that. And here also $2 here as well. So thank you. And then we got a $30, $28 Canadian dollar super chat by Ontario Inc. Transport. Thank you so much for the super chat saying good job, use of logic and brain daily. Wow, thank you. Wow, I appreciate your appreciation. Thank you for the super chat. That was a big one. Thank you. Thank you. Very generous. Okay. All right. So we have 4 more questions to go. Jack Neff saying, what did you guys think about Will Smith clap? Oh, I already answered that. If you guys had mentioned you would like a show, I will have a video out later showing how on honor culture was being defended on Iranian defended and fought against on Iranian social media using this event. I'll bring you some tweets to highlight and stuff so we could go over them, right? So I will have if you want to see that, subscribe. Okay, that will be open to everybody. It wouldn't be patron only. Okay. D saying, do you think your political views would gain more traction if you weren't tied to Atheist Republic? No, I think like the reason I have anybody listening to me is because of Atheist Republic. So I don't think so. No, I think Atheist Republic is what gave me, some voice. So it's the opposite. Especially now on the Persian show. The Persian show is growing very significantly, and in a month I'm going to become a lot more active on the Persian channel. So because that channel is showing a lot of promises. Negar is saying, curly hair Armin, thank you for taking the time. I should go by. Okay, thank you, Negar. And Vikram is saying, what happened to Faisal? Haven't heard of him in ages. I don't know what he's doing, but he left Secular Jihadists because he thought we were too radical. He thought we were too anti-religious, which is an accusation I would accept. Well, not too. I love that accusation because I want to be as anti-religious as I possibly can get. And yeah, he actually threatened to sue us for the name. Legally, he said, if I'm leaving, you have to shut down Secular Jihadists. And if we don't, he's going to challenge us legally. I'm like, that's not how any of this works. Like, go ahead and sue us, see where that goes. Like there's no trademark, no anything. Like, you don't own the name. You didn't even come up with the name. We came up with the name together. You can't just be like, I'm leaving and you have to shut down. And if you don't, I will legally challenge you. Or like, yeah, okay. Sure, buddy. But yeah, he didn't, and as I expected, so that's been good. Yeah, but I don't know what he's doing. I think he's like, I actually support the project that he's doing. He's working with Ideas Beyond Borders, which translates English work to Arabic, and I think that's very valuable. Even though we had this like disagreement and not a very easy separation, I do appreciate the work he's doing because I do think translation work is very valuable. Okay. All right, guys. I'm going to head out. Sure, John. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Also, Vikram saying, I think Atheist Republic is a bigger brand than Armenians. Yeah. Atheist Republic is. Yeah, I am. If I have any voice, it's because Atheist Republic has become a lot bigger than I am, right? So especially on Facebook and other places. So, and Instagram and Twitter. Yeah, it's a much bigger voice. So I am, if anything, Atheist Republic is giving me a bigger voice than I am giving Atheist Republic. Secular Edge saying, great stream. Also, by the way, Atheist Republic is doing a lot better. It's growing a lot more significantly and doing a lot more interesting things ever since Susanna has taken over as a CEO. So I'm, I wanted to give credit, but there's also a whole bunch of people. Like I don't want like people assuming like there's a whole bunch of people that we can't mention that are working behind the scene because they're trying to be private, right? But given that Susanna is the only person that I could publicly mention, I want to mention that. Yeah, I want to mention. Oh, here Susanna's saying, "Oh, thank you." All right, guys, I'm gonna go. No, somebody's saying our queen. Guys, we're anti-monarchy here. Didn't you like? What the hell? I'm gonna ban Sterling. Like we're extremely anti-monarch here. So no, Susanna is our CEO, not our queen. All right, guys, I'm gonna go before I get in trouble. Bye. Like the video, share the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, become a patron if you want me to spend a lot of time on your questions, and your questions will get priority. At some point, we're going to get to a place, hopefully, where we get so many patron questions where we're mostly going to be doing patron questions and super chat questions and member questions. Okay, so no freebies at some point. Okay, but we'll get there at some point. Okay, so yeah, become a patron if you can. Link in the description. Bye.